Hello, in this video we introduce the structure and functionality of Mathematica. When you start up Mathematica from the desktop, you will get a welcome screen as seen here. And on that welcome screen you will be given the option to sign in with your Wolfram ID, which I have already done at the top here on the left side. In addition, you'll notice that you have a number of options, including opening a new document, and you'll have a listing of recent files that you may have used. Of course, you can always open a document from your computer or from the Wolfram Cloud. So let's start by opening a new document. The documents that we'll be using are called notebooks, and so we're going to open up a new notebook, and so we get this blank screen window as shown here. And if you look across the top, you'll see this horizontal line with the little flashing cursor and the little plus sign. This will be the point of entry as you begin typing into the Mathematica notebook. So what, young Padawan, shall we do first? Well, whenever you are producing a new document, you generally want to start out with the title. So the first thing we'll do is enter a title. Well, how do we do that? Well, there are a couple of different ways to do that in Mathematica. One is to simply go to the Format menu, and from the Format menu you can select Style and you can select Title. You'll also notice that you have a shortcut key that Alt-1 will give you the title. In addition, you could just click on the little plus sign here and you see a few options that come up. If we select other style of text, we'll get the same listing of items that we saw earlier, and we can select title that way. Now, I would certainly encourage you to learn the shortcut keys, because that is by far the easiest way to enter different structures or formats for the different cells in Mathematica. So we'll just start with the title here, and then we'll just type Mathematica Introduction Part 1. Now you will see we've got relatively large font size here, and as you get into Mathematica and do more things with it, you'll learn, of course, that you can change the font size, you can change the font, you can change the color, and you can do all of that as you might with a word processor to make your document look nice. Of course, Mathematica goes well beyond being a word processor. We're going to use it to do computations, to do data analysis, and such. Now, what you'll notice when you look over here, we have our title, and on the right side we have this little bracket that shows up, and this corresponds to the area of a cell. This is what Mathematica calls those regions of your document where you have entered different text, different instructions, different commands. Each one is called a cell. You can certainly have multiple lines in a single cell, but let's go on and actually advance to a new type of cell. So what we're going to do to get out of the title cell to enter a new cell is simply hit the down arrow in here. And when we do that, we will see that, again, we get another horizontal line with the flashing cursor, and we're ready to enter something else. Now, we're not going to enter a title. What we're going to do is, let's just start with a subtitle or a section. So again, I'm going to go up here to Format, and I'm going to select under Format, Section, which you'll notice is Alt-4. And here I'm going to enter a simple title for the section, which is going to be Basic Structure. So here we'll learn a little bit about the basic structure of Mathematica, hence the title Basic Structure. Pretty clever at that, huh? And how we organize things in a Mathematica document. So we're going to move on to another cell. You'll see actually the basic structure, we have another bracket here which corresponds to a cell. And you'll notice actually on the outside there's a bracket that encloses both our title cell and our section cell. Mathematica has a hierarchy of cells, and we'll see how this can be important later on. But what we'll notice here is that the title cell is higher in the hierarchy than the section cell, and they're included together in that. All right, so we're going to click here. I'm going to move down to my next cell, and let's just enter basic text. Let's just start typing something about what we're going to be doing here. If we go over here to the plus sign again, we'll notice that one of the options is plain text, or of course again if we go up to format, we'll notice that we have a style, and that plain text is Alt 7. You'll also notice here the check mark by input. That, by the way, is the default. If you start typing a new cell, Mathematica is going to assume it's input unless you change the formatting. And that's what it uses for commands and computations and things of that nature. But we're going to go ahead and just select text here. So I'm going to go ahead and say in this section, and actually you'll notice when I misspelled things here that we get the red squiggly line underneath of that. So Mathematica does have a spell check. If I right click on it, we'll see actually that it gives you a number of options, none of which are what I intended to type. So we're going to go to correct that and do section. And in this section we will learn about the basic structure of a Mathematica notebook. And you'll notice notice that I hadn't capitalized Mathematica, and so I got a spell check error indicating that. All right, so that's our text cell. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do a basic instruction in Mathematica. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit my down arrow to enter a new cell. And this time I'm not going to select anything because I'm going to just do input, and that is the default. So we'll do a simple computation here. And let's just do a multiplication, and we'll just say 2 times. We can use the asterisk for times, or actually, as you'll learn, if you put a space between different characters in Mathematica, it will assume it's a multiplication. And to get the result here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift Enter simultaneously. So it's the Shift Enter that tells Mathematica to go ahead and do the particular operation, and it gives me an output. You'll notice it says input 1 because this is our first input. Output 1 is 6. So the result of multiplying 2 by 3 is equal to 6. Wow, isn't that great? Aren't you glad you have Mathematica to do that? Because you wouldn't have been able to figure that out otherwise. All right, so that's just a basic computation. There are many different types of things that Mathematica can do, and we'll talk about all of the myriad of functions embedded in Mathematica a little bit later on. Now, there is another way to go about entering Mathematica instructions, and that's using free-form language. Free-form language is basically set up so that you can enter commands essentially in basic English. If you're familiar with Wolfram Alpha, which is available through your browser on the web, you'll know that with Wolfram Alpha you can do such a thing. You can actually use that same structure language to enter commands within Mathematica itself. So how do we do freeform? Again, you can hit the plus sign and you'll see one of the options is freeform input. Or if you're beginning at the very beginning of a cell and you're ready to type something, the other way to do it is just simply hit an equal sign, and you know you get this nice little orange equal sign that shows up, and this allows me to go ahead and enter just English language to do a particular function or inquiry of some sort or another. So let's suppose that I want to integrate a function, and let's say it's sine of 2x. And let's say we're going to integrate it from x equals 0 to x equals pi. And then I'll hit Shift Enter, because anytime we want to execute a command, the Shift Enter is what we do. And we get the result here, which is equal to 0. Alright, so we've done a few commands here, and before we get too far along in this discussion and construction of a notebook, maybe we should go ahead and save our notebook. So I'm going to go up here to the menu list across the top, and I'm going to just select Save, so I can save this onto my particular hard drive. We can, of course, also use Mathematica to access information, not just to do computation. So again, just doing free-form input. So I'm going to enter an equal sign here. And let's get information on blackbody radiation. So again, this would be essentially what you would type if you were trying to do an inquiry through Wolfram Alpha, and Shift Enter. And so this comes back with some information with an equation, so I actually have a formula here. And we'll learn how to use those formulas in later videos. But also, if I notice a little plus sign here in the right corner, it actually opens up the window to give me a lot more information. So here we'll see it actually allows me to calculate some various functions by entering appropriate data. Temperature and such, to do the calculation, to calculate the spectral radiance. It also shows how I would, for example, enter the functions in the mathematical language, the Wolfram language, to do this same kind of thing. And then there's just additional information giving formulas and defining terms. So we scroll down here, shows a graph of the blackbody radiation distribution for spectral radiance, etc. So I can get a whole bunch of information this way. Again, just like I would if I was entering it through Wolfram Alpha. We'll also learn later on that you can actually use commands to do a web search through the Mathematica. This is something we will explore in a later video. Now, let's go back to the brackets on the right side of our notebook here and again look at the hierarchy. Again, we'll notice that we have the title cell and there's an outer bracket that encloses everything we've entered so far, including the title cell. If we look at the section cell, we'll notice that there's a bracket starting with the section cell that encloses everything that we've entered below that, because everything we've entered below that is an input cell and is lower hierarchy and belongs to the basic structure cell. The remaining cells are enclosed within themselves. So for example, we have a text cell here, but there's just a single bracket there. Our first input contains two cells enclosed within a bracket. And then we have a second input that shows the same thing, and our third input shows the same thing. So one thing to note is if you double click on any bracket, it's going to collapse everything within that particular bracket. So if I take the one that starts with the title and I double click on it, we'll notice that everything disappears. It's just collapsed. Double clicking again opens it up. If I go to the section cell and close and look at that outer bracket, if I double click on it, what I will note is that everything collapses there, but what we get left with is the title of the section cell as well as the overall title cell. And then we'll notice the same thing. For example, the input, which contained 2, will collapse. That just shows us the input. Now, one thing to note is if I just want to show, if it's not the input I want to show, for example, let's go down here to the blackbody radiation. if I double click on that outer, I'll notice that it collapses and it just shows me the input. However, if I go in and I double click on the one which shows the equation, what you'll notice is that our input actually disappears and I've just got the equation. Now this can be convenient if you don't want the commands that you have used to create a particular output are shown explicitly within your document. You can collapse and get rid of that, so it's hidden. We can always get back to it by double clicking, and we'll see that. But if we want to hide the commands to pretty up our document a little bit, then we can click on any cell within that particular area, and we'll find that it will collapse to just that cell, and we'll hide all of the others. So that's really nice to help make our document a little bit more appealing.